Hi, my name is Tom and welcome to Honest Student Budget. This is going to be my long-awaited comparison video between the VSONIC VSD3Ss, which is on my left here, which retails for about $45 to about $65, and the VSONIC GR07 that's on my right here, and I have the base edition, which originally retailed for about $179, but they're currently sold around $129. And I'll put the links in the description below on where you can find out more information about these earphones and where you can get them as well. And I'll also put in the description below my more in-depth explanation, especially on the sound quality aspect, or specifically on the sound quality aspect about the differences between these two earphones. And that's going to be in my post over at Head5. So without further ado, let's get into the comparison. Now, in terms of design, I think the VSD3Ss have a more eye-catching or more eye-popping design because it is more reminiscent of a jewel or a gem, and it has these cut-out edges. And I think it's just because I got the red and the blue, it's just, I think, a lot more bling bling, I guess you could say, or a lot more, sorry I said that, a lot more interesting to look at compared to the minimalistic design that's on the GR07s, which is a lot more understated, a lot more sleeker, and a lot more subtle in comparison. So it's really up to personal preference. In terms of build quality though, I think that the GR07s are way farther ahead in this category because the earpieces, although both of the earphones are made out of plastic, the plastic used here is much more thicker, and I think it's more reassuring overall. The GR07s have a better built cable. The cable is a medium thickness and it's still supple, but at the same time it feels more reassuring in the hand. And going into the Y-shaped connector here, the Y-shaped connector here is not overly large and it's well relieved overall. So I think that this connector is very appropriate for portable purposes. And the bottom part of the cable here, again, it's a little thicker than the top part of the cable, which it still retains its suppleness and flexibility overall, but it still feels substantial overall. And the actual L-shaped jack here, it's a low profile overall, and I really do prefer a low L-shaped jack, but there's enough room here to go through thick smartphone cases. For example, I'll show you guys right here. So again, it doesn't stick out of your pocket much, and it's well relieved overall. So I think that this right angle jack is actually one of my favorite amongst all earphones out there. Now, in comparison to the VSD3Ss, the cable has a similar sort of appearance. However, the cable is thinner overall, and it doesn't feel as supple and doesn't feel as reassuring. If anything, I actually think it's definitely a step down in terms of the actual build quality of the cable. And the cable here, again, on the Y-shaped connector, it's a good size, but it's not well relieved overall. It's not actually really relieved much at all. So that's my biggest gripe about the VSD3Ss, which is the cable quality. And this is my biggest gripe on the actual cable. It's not because it's a straight angle jack. I'm not a fan of the straight angle jack, but it's the fact that this plastic part here, I hope you can see this, there's no relief on this actual cable. Thankfully, this cable is replaceable because the VSD3Ss have a detachable cable feature, and I'm not going to detach it here. But I've heard some people saying the actual connections on the VSD3Ss are a little bit iffy for some batches. So they released a non-detachable cable version which avoids this detachable cable system. So the new non-detachable cable versions forget this issue, so the cable is fixed, so there's no connection issue. However, I've seen pictures online, and VSONIC has not fixed the issue of this straight angle jack and the lack of relief. So I'm not really sure. They fixed one issue, but they didn't fix this other one, and I'm surprised that they didn't do that. In terms of comfort, the GR07s win out in this category because even though the VSD3Ss have a very ergonomically rounded shell, the housing itself, as you can see here, is much larger than the GR07s. So the GR07s would accommodate a wide variety of different ear shapes, sizes, and shapes as well because of the actual smaller housing, and also aided by the fact that the metal has an adjustable nozzle, so it can accommodate your ear canal, whatever orientation it is, whether it's aiming down, up, or anything like that. So the GR07s are just overall more comfortable. In terms of isolations, the VSD3Ss wins out in this category because it's a fully sealed housing, so there are no ports on this earphone at all. And I highly recommend this earphone for someone that's going to be traveling on the bus or train a lot because they do block out quite a bit of noise. Whereas the GR07 has a number of ports right here, one, and over here as well. So that leaks in more noise, so I think the isolation is just about average. Now, before we dive into the sound quality aspect of these two earphones, I just want to remind you guys that I'm going to put a link in the description below on my full post over on HeadFi and my link over at HeadFi, which talks about these earphones in terms of their sound in a more detailed fashion compared to the video, because is a time constraint in this video. So I hope you guys check it out. Now, in terms of sound, remember the GR07s here is priced at about $179 originally, but they're now down to about $129, whereas the VSD3Ss are priced around $45 to $65. So there's still a substantial price gap between these two earphones, so keep that in mind when comparing them. However, in terms of actual sound, I think that they have more similarities and differences between each other. I think the VSD3Ss are much more V-shaped in comparison. The GR07 is more balanced. Even though I have the base edition one here, I think the base here is just slightly above elevated over neutral. It's not bass head by any means whatsoever. Now, starting from the bass, the VSD3Ss have a more warmer, a stronger kind of a mid-bass punch to it, so there's definitely more bass to it, whereas the GR07 has a tighter, more textured, a leaner, and a faster bass. So I think the VSD3Ss is better suited for more pop and R&B genres, whereas the GR07 can handle more electronic genres better because it has faster and quicker kind of bass lines. So if I had to put this into an analogy, I think the GR07s are more like the vodka in the earphone world, whereas you drink this fast, in terms of bass anyway, you drink this fast and it kind of, you're over and done with, and it's really quick and it's really fast, whereas the VSD3Ss are more like the whiskey or the wine, where you kind of drink this slowly and kind of savor the experience, or in this case the bass. So the bass on the GR07 is a little more, I would say, satisfying for more those slower genres as well. Now, going into the mid-range, I would say the VSD3Ss have a more forward, a more intimate mid-range, and a more richer and a thicker sounding mid-range as well, whereas the GR07 has a more of a leaner, a more cleaner, and a more better separated and a more detailed mid-range. So everything is more separated in terms of the vocals and instruments as well. So I really do prefer that on the GR07s. Going into the treble, the VSD3Ss and the GR07 share a similar kind of characteristic in the lower treble, which has a little bit of a peak in the lower treble, which definitely makes music a little more crisper, a little more edgy, and it does bring out a little more sibilance and a harshness into the music. So these earphones are definitely not for someone that listens to their music loud, because that can be a little jarring and a little more fatiguing for your ears. However, so some people do like this kind of edge in the treble, some people hate it, and I've seen some complaints saying that the GR07 and the VSD3Ss are a little too sibilant and a little too harsh in the treble for some people. However, for those that can get acclimated, or those that enjoy that kind of signature, I'm actually one of them. The treble definitely gives more crispness, a little more life for female vocals, and makes music, I think, more interesting overall. However, this is better for a lower volume or moderate listening overall. In comparison, I think the GR07s are slightly more peaky and a little bit more sibilant in the treble. However, the GR07s are much more extended, they're much more detailed, and I think they're especially for stringed instruments like violins and cellos, and I think they're just more detailed overall, and it's more airier overall in comparison of the two. Now, going into the soundstage, I would say the soundstage is wider on the GR07s by a lot. It's better separated, it's airier, as I said before, it's more expansive compared to the VSD3Ss, which has a little more of an intimate, a little bit more of a congested kind of sound in comparison to the two. So in conclusion, I think that the VSD3Ss is a fantastic bargain at its price, barring the actual build quality issues, especially for the detachable cable connection and everything like that. But once you can get past this, and I think the VSD3Ss provide a fantastic bang for your buck in terms of its sound quality, isolation, and comfort as well. The GR07s I think is an upgrade in this category in terms of sound. Comfort I think is more comfortable. The build quality is definitely much better, and I think it just sounds a lot more, it's more in my wheelhouse, I would say. And the GR07, even though it's a little bit of an older kind of design, it's about 2 to 3, maybe 4 years now, it still is a fantastically well-known and very often recommended earphone as well, and it still remains my favorite earphone of all time. So I hope that review and that comparison helped you guys out. If it did, definitely hit the like and subscribe button, and definitely share it with your friends. And if you have any questions on these earphones, hit me up in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.